In our day-to-day existence down here on earth, we get to see how our lives get to play out, in different strata of life and in different ways of getting to do things. We get to see how things get to change. We get to see how we ourselves get to change. We get to see how we grow. We get to see how we retard. And most times our experiences down here aren't so different from the experiences of those gone before us, the experiences of those who came here before us, the experiences of those we now read up in history books for those who were popular enough to make it into the annals of history, and those left to the mercy of their family members to get to keep their memory in mind as far as they can do that before they finally fizzle into oblivion. And in looking at our lives, in juxtaposing these experiences, we've come to have both of those in the past and our own experience is the human experience, is the experience of the human race, is the experience of the human capacity to adapt to different places. It's the experience of humanity's interaction with the environment we find ourselves in, the environment we find other bodies inside, the environment we now claim to be our own, the environment we now claim to be our own. And so one begins to ask the question, how should life move? How should life be? How shouldn't it be? What should we do? What shouldn't we do? How should we look at life? How shouldn't we look at life? What are the things we ordinarily ought to do that we are not doing, and what are the things we don't want to do that ordinarily is also happening, and what are the things we want to do but we don't want others to do to us, and what are the things we want others to do that we ourselves don't want to do. That becomes the basis of the basic ethics we get to look around us. And for someone like Immanuel Kant, he comes with the categorical imperative of, do to others what you ordinarily would want them to do to you. But you're not living in this world alone. You're living in this world in relationship with others. You're living in this world in relationship with the environment. You're living in this world in relationship with other things outside of yourself. Which makes a lot of persons also get to ask the question whether there's actual meaning in our lives down here, or we are just some evolutionary miscalculation, some mishap that happened in the course of evolution. A thing I strongly contend with as it concerns the fact that I don't think life ordinarily is without meaning. Because explain why we get to dress up, not go out naked, get to eat, get to call people, get to text people, get to write the way we write, get to do things the way we do things, get to buy and sell the way we do things. How we apply the economy of our life down here, what the Catholic Church will call the economy of man's salvation. And so, if ordinarily there is a purpose to life, regardless of whether we know this purpose or not, regardless of whether the purpose of existence is clearly stated out or not, it begs the question, what are we doing here? How are we to live our lives down here? Even if we are not destined, even if we are not determined to have a purpose down here, what do we do in between the times we find ourselves alive? What do we do? How do we move on? How do we see life? How do we progress? How do we navigate our ways down here? There are two ways to get to look at it. Between Halloween, All Saints, and All Souls Day, these three days of different commemorations done predominantly in the West, and how they get to look at life. What has come now to be Halloween came up from All Hallows, but what we now have is almost like a celebration of the demonic, the celebration of horror, which would make sense to the course of our conversation today. The next is All Saints, which is on November 1st. The celebration of all the saints, all those presumably who are in heaven, so to say, whatsoever heavens means to you or don't. Then the next day we're going to look at is All Souls. That's the grand unifier of all of this, the grand leveler, the doom of all mortal creature, the doom of all creatures, the doom of all things that have life. if we are to talk about the doom in that particular way, because certain persons also make the argument about the fact that death is what gives life meaning. You get to see this also one way or the other from the Holy Writ, the Bible, where it says for the believer, life is transitioned, not ended. Life is transformed. Life is changed. And it's also the claim a whole lot of persons get to hold as it concerns the afterlife. And so what about the horrors of life that has come down to now represent Halloween, the living like a saint that is celebrated on the 1st of November, and indeed the grand level of all things, which is dead, celebrated on the 2nd of November. You get to see how ordinarily things get to play out.